Greetings folks, Kabrasita here and welcome to my kitchen. Today we're making a customary Russian dish called Borsh. Now it's not spelled with a T, it's just spelled Borsh. Now to make this recipe, you don't need to be a chef, anybody can do it. So to make this dish, you're gonna need a few simple ingredients. First off, what you're gonna need is a pot to put water in. You will also need access to clean water, I highly recommend that. Second, you're gonna need this frying pan. I'll explain what you need it for later. Then you're going to need to make your own broth. Now, you can use beef soup bones, whatever the hell they're called. You can use these bones. It will make it a lot easier for you, and it will make this taste amazingly well. You can also, you will absolutely need beef. Now, what kind of beef you want, what kind of cut you want, doesn't matter, as long as it's some form of good beef. Now, for the rest of the ingredients, as you can see in front of me. You will need potatoes. Very important. It's Russian cooking, and all Russian dishes have potatoes in them. So, you're going to need some cabbage. Cabbage, extremely important. You will need onion. You will need beet. You will need carrots. Now, you can use baby carrots if you want. I prefer to use these ones for soups particularly. So, you will need garlic. And, of course, the greens, which is, you got your parsley, you got your green onions, and, of course, dill. Now, again, every Russian dish has dill in it. Now, as a final thing, you will need a cutting board or a cutting surface, preferably several different kinds, because you will be cutting meat and you will be cutting vegetables. You will need a knife. And to help you, you also need a little one of these peelers, however you want to peel them, up to you. So, this is all you're going to need to make this dish happen. So, stay tuned and watch how it's done. So now what we do is we prepare broth. Now broth is probably the most important thing for this particular dish. Now what do most people hear when you say broth? You hear shit like this. No, we will not be using pre-prepared some company manufactured broth. We'll be making our own. How do we do that? Easy. What you do is you take the water. You have a whole bunch of water in this pan. I usually fill it up to about right here, or you have those little dimples there for handles. What you do is you fill it up to about the second one, the top one. So then what you do is you take beef bones. Now you can buy those at any grocery store. For those of you who don't know what they are or how to use them, you probably never even noticed them before. All you do is you just drop some of these bones, just drop them all in there. Drop as many as you want, it doesn't matter. I usually drop all of them because you will be taking them out after the broth is done. So, you fill it in, you put it on the stove, and once the stove decides to turn on, and you put it up, and at first, you put it up at about medium-high. Medium-high is the best one to go for now until the water starts to boil. Once the water starts to boil, then you're good to go. Then I'll walk you through what happens next. So, let's do this. So it's been about 20 minutes now, and we're going to take a look and see what's going on inside the cooking pot. As you can see, a whole bunch of crap is starting to accumulate on top. What you want to do to resolve this situation is take a trusty spoon and just stir it, and then you want to scoop all this crap and you want to dump it all out into a sink, the garbage can, whatever. The key to this is you get rid of all this nasty stuff. You don't want that stuff floating around in your broth. So you go ahead and you get rid of that, and once you do, we'll move on to the next step. And we have returned. It has been about an hour since we began our endeavor into making borscht. Now, the broth itself, it looks good, so what we want to do now is get rid of some of those bones that are in there now. So you can use a little hand strainer like this. Just take a couple of them out. Like that. And now what you can do with these is you can throw them out, or if you have a dog, they will love you. If you just let it cool off a little bit and give it to them and you're good to go. So you're going to go ahead and remove a couple, most of them, leave one or two in there for the taste. So the soup bones have been removed, and now we're going to go ahead and move on to the next ingredient, which makes borscht what it is, and that is beets. This thing. What you want to do is you want to thoroughly wash this and use one of these things to peel it. Or you can use a knife or however you want to peel it. I don't care. This is what I use. the beet has been peeled nicely. So what you want to do now is you want to cut it. And I will show you exactly what type of cutting you want to do for it. Oh man, beets are very rough. They're very difficult to work with, and I suspect the reason why a lot of people don't like them. People that don't like the taste, you know what? You've never had good beets. If all you have to say about beets is that you've had those canned garbage, then you've never had good beets. I'm sorry, that's just how it goes. So go ahead and cut them into small strips. And remember, the thinner the strips are, the faster they will cook. The reason why I am not adding the additional meat right now is because beets take a lot longer to cook than beef. And whenever making soup, you want to add things to soup based on their density and cook time. The beets have been finely chopped, and you can see some of the pieces are big, some of the pieces are small, and that's fine. That's my personal preference to do it that way because some will lose more flavor and some will lose less. As you can see, this is your normal size beet that you want to use. So what you want to do now is take this, do a taste test, make sure it tastes good. Oh, this is amazing. And go ahead and throw it all in your pot. Once all the beets have been thrown into the pot, you go ahead and you would stir it, cover it, and wait for the water to start boiling. And now for the most healthiest ingredient here. Beef. So you want to get the green cutting board out of the way and get your red one. Because as you know, red is for the beef. So you take the beef, whichever one you bought. Now, this one in particular I got is called beef for stew. So I guess it's for stew. You know what? It doesn't freaking matter. Because what you want is you want beef that is already cut, or you can cut it yourself. You just want the beef that looks good, really. So now what you want to do is look through it and make all the pieces somewhat even. If they're too big, you can cut them up. You can cut them up for just a little bit. It doesn't matter. This is your personal preference. I prefer my meat to be nicely finely cut, so it's nice and so there's more of it really. So you can serve more portions, and it makes you feel like you're eating a lot more than you actually are eating. If you want to remove the fat, as you can see here, this is some of the fat. If you want to remove that, you can go ahead and do so. In fact, for this particular piece, I will remove just a little bit of the super fat because all it's going to do is it's going to fatten up the soup and it will accumulate up on the top and you create this foam which may not be very pleasing. So, but go ahead and cut up as much as you want, whichever sizes you want. Like I said, you know, normally you would have pieces like this. However, for me, I don't care. Use pieces like this, doesn't matter. Use as big pieces or as small pieces as you freaking want. So go ahead and do that, and once you are absolutely finished with this, you want to go ahead and throw it in the water. Once all the beef is in the pot, you want to make sure that you are at medium-high heat, which is exactly what this is, and then we're going to prepare to finish up the rest of the ingredients. So now as the beef is slowly going to be cooking, you can go ahead and cover this. Take your frying pan, you can put it away for now. You don't need it at this very moment. What you will need to do is the next densest vegetable that you have on the menu, and that is carrots. Now these carrots I have are pretty big ones. Again, you can use your baby carrots if you want. They take much quicker to cook. They're a little bit sweeter though. That's the only reason why I want to use these, because I don't want this soup to be tasting too sweet. So you go ahead and you peel these, peel the skin off this as much as you want, really. That's up to your personal preference. So now that I have carrots nicely peeled, as you can see here, very well done. And what you want to do is bring back your vegetable cutting board and start cutting them. Now, as you may notice, this soup might start to bubble over a little bit, or not bubble over, but the moisture in there starts to build up. Don't worry about it, just open the lid up a little bit, you'll be fine. Now, however you cut these carrots is really up to you. This is my method. You know, I usually cut it in about this size like this, and then just cut it in half like that. And then you just go ahead and chop them. Now, with a big piece like this, as you can see, this thing is huge. What I do is I cut it in fours. So like this. So you go ahead and just line them all up and chop them up. Boom. Finished product, as you can tell right here. Finished product, nicely chopped up, 2 carrots. So you want to do is set it aside until the meat is finished. Now, I prefer to use one of these things. It just makes it easier. Just dump them all in there and separate them out. Now, since your carrots already been finished, but it is still too early to put them into the soup. Now, how do you know that? Well, that's when you take a look at your soup and see what it's doing. Chances are it will foam up just a little bit. Just skim that foam off completely. So with the carrots chopped and the foam from the soup has been removed, now it's time for the most universal and versatile ingredient of this particular dish, and that is potatoes. Now, what kind of potatoes do you want to use? I personally prefer to have the ones where you can keep the skin on them. You can use those big ones if you want. If you're using the big potatoes, you have to peel the skin off them. These little young ones like this, you can just go ahead and chop them up. But first what you want to do is you want to wash them. So wash as many as you want. I will show you exactly how many I will use. This way you can kind of gauge to see whether you like to use more or not for your own recipe. So the potatoes have been washed, and this is about how many I'm going to be using. Now, as you can see, they're all different shapes and sizes. So how do you know what to cut them for? Because you do want to cut them. You don't want to just leave them like this, because you want some of the potato flavor in your soup. All you got to do is just cut them in fours like this. You're looking for a shape and size roughly about this much. You don't want to go bigger than that. Like you can see, this piece is a little bit bigger, so you can cut it in half. But you don't want to go too big pieces, but you don't want to make them too small where they'll be cooking too fast and they'll just become mush. And that's not something that anybody wants. So you go ahead and you cut them up. Potatoes have been nicely cut up. As you can see, I did chop some of the pieces into a bit smaller bits. You don't want uniformity. You know, contrary to what people believe, you want things to be just a little bit different, because that adds that little imperfection to your soup, and that's what makes it taste very homey and really nice. So your potatoes are good to go. So at this point, you want to double check your soup again, because chances are it foamed up again. So you do that, you remove that foam, and then you will add your carrots. So the soup has been defoamed, and the final thing you want to do before you go ahead and put your carrots in is you want to make sure that the beef is actually cooked, or at least somewhat cooked. You take it out and you take a look at it. As you can see right here, it is nice and steamy, and it looks like it's pretty much done. So you don't have to take its temperature if you don't want to. You can try it and take a bite out of it if you want to. It should be pretty much done. So what you do now is you take all your carrots and you throw them all in there. They've been thrown in there. As you will notice that the temperature of the water is stopped boiling essentially, or stopped bubbling over. What you want to do is you wait until it bubbles over again and starts bubbling. That's when the next step comes in. Now we're in the home stretch. The carrots are being nicely done. The meat is ready. Everything is bubbling over. So you go ahead and you just transfer all of your potatoes that you want to use, and transfer them onto whatever dish you're going to use to just dump it in there, and dump it in there. So now, because you've added potatoes, now this is the point where you can start adding spices. Remember, you could have added spices and flavors and all that stuff beforehand. You could have, but potatoes absorb a lot of the spices, especially salty flavors. So at this point, you want to add a little bit of salt. How much salt? Well, that's up to your cardiologist, really. So you add that and you let it finish. And what you want to do next is you want to start working on the onions and your garlic. So you've peeled the onion and you've liberated the garlic from the bunch, whatever thing it came in. So now what you want to do is you want to chop the onion. Chopping the onion is, that's a personal preference, however you want to do it. I prefer it somewhat finely chopped, but it is ultimately completely up to you. Now that the onions have been chopped, what you want to do is take this and you want to chop the garlic up. Now again, however your technique is to do it is really totally up to you. This is how I prefer to chop, or at least liberate the garlic itself from its shell. So what you do is just take the flat end of your knife and boom, hit it, and it's done. So go ahead and do this to move on to the next step. So garlic has been cleared from its shell, so now it's time to just finely chop it up. Again, chop it up to taste, however you personally prefer to do it. I am not a big fan of big chunks of garlic, even though I do love its taste. I think that it loses something when they're just these big giant chunks. So you go ahead and chop it up however you personally like. Again, my recommendation is as finely as possible. Now while this is done, or while you're doing this, take a look at your soup. Are the carrots ready? If you take out one of the carrots and taste it, if it's nice and soft, that means they're ready. So what you want to do is you put it onto simmer temperature, which is the lowest temperature you can possibly think of. So this is done. Just transfer it out to your transfer plate. So everything's been chopped up and looking nice on this platter. Take your frying pan and just transfer it all onto here. You can get it all over the place too if you want. It is completely optional, but you can do it. So once it's been transferred over, you can add a little bit of olive oil or however you want to do to fry it. And take this, get your wok out of the way if you have one, and put it on medium-high heat. And you want to just brown them just a little bit. While that's heating up, take your cabbage that you have. A very important ingredient. Go ahead and wash it off, and I'll show you what to do with it. So just make sure to wash it off, and I personally prefer to take the outermost layer out and toss it, because you don't know what kind of chemicals on there or what kind of just crap that's been on there because it's been sitting in the store. So go ahead and do that, or do it however you feel like, whatever you feel like is necessary. While your onions are beginning to produce this nice sizzling sound, you take your washed cabbage, and I usually say cut it about in half. Now, I cut it at an angle just so not to get the core. Some people don't like core. I actually think it has its purpose, just not in Borsh. So you take this, and you are left with about half of cabbage, a little bit less. So what you do is you just go ahead and chop it up into small pieces, small strips like this. And I will show you exactly why you want to use it as far as making it into strips. Because once you've done that, turn it over, and now it's nice and chopped. Look at this. Now it's all nice and chopped and nice and fluffy. So you want to go for about this much. If you want to add more, super easy. What you do is you just put it out like this, chop a small piece around where the core is, get the core out if you have it, and just go ahead and just chop it up just a little bit. So in my case, I'm gonna add a little bit more cabbage than normal. So with the rest of this, you have the rest of this left. What are you gonna do with it? Well, that's a good question. That'll be probably one of my other videos. So you have all this left over here. Your onions are gonna be done very soon. So you just go ahead and focus your attention on the onions and the garlic. So just as the onions are starting to brown, go ahead, take them off fire, and just throw it all nice into your soup. This may seem like it's a lot of onions, and you may want to use less. That is completely up to you. Personally, I think that onions, a lot of onions like that, add really nice, unique flavor to this soup that is going to be very enjoyable. And now for the final, last thing, before you throw this in there, add whatever spices you want. Now, what I usually do is, see how we have bay leaves? A lot of people add them earlier on, and that's fine. But one thing to consider is whenever your soup is boiling, he may break these apart, and then it'll become small little chunks and pieces that are just getting in the way of you trying to enjoy your soup. So, but add a bunch of bay leaves, and of course, my personal favorite, the chili sauce. You add a whole bunch of it to here as well. Now, you use that to taste. I add a whole bunch because I like my food really spicy. So, you add this in there, you take this, and you go ahead and you fill it up into the pot. Fill up, throw all of it off, throw all of it in here. Now, at first, do not stir this. And you turn the fire off, and you cover it. Now, what you're left with is your greens. And that is the most final ingredient for this dish. So go ahead and clean all of your greens for you. Now you have parsley, green onions, and dill. Move this out of the way. Let's start with dill. With dill, it is really easy. You just want to make sure you separate it. Don't use these stems. This stuff like this is, well, some people may like it. I personally am not a fan. So you just go ahead and you pull off the big stems and throw them out. So you've cleared off majority of the big stems of your dill. Just chop it up. Once that's nicely chopped, toss it in and go ahead and start working on your onions. Green onions, again, super simple. Chop them up. The size of the pieces that you chop them into depends really up to you. I prefer them to be moderately sized like this. So just chop them all up. And again, toss them all in there. And now what you're left with is a mess on your cutting board and a whole bunch of parsley. Now, you can separate parsley, depends on how frugal you want to be with it. You can separate it all out. I just go like this, cut this off, toss it. What you're left with is just some of the smaller pieces. Go ahead and separate it all out. And you will be left with a nice amount of parsley that you could use to throw in your soup to finish up the meal. So now all you're left with is a little bit of parsley. You've separated it all out. If you have a little bit of stems in there, you know, this is fine. It's not that big of a deal because all of it's going to dissolve. So just chop it up just a little bit. Now, if you have one of those interesting blades, the curved little blades on the knife, it makes it easier to chop this kind of stuff up. I don't, so whatever. So take all this and throw it all in there. Once you've thrown it all in there, your preparation is officially complete. So what you do is you go ahead and at this point, you stir it and let it sit for, I would say, about 10 to 15 minutes. Only then try it, because if you try it now, you're not going to get the proper flavor of it. And at that point, you will season it with whatever else is left. So wait for about 15 minutes and you can use this time to clean off the mess of your prep area that you've made. So we have finished making the borscht. So now what's left to do is, of course, you should have already tasted it. You should have already looked at it, making sure you were satisfied. Now, this particular dish I've made, it's a little bit, it's got a little bit too much stuff in there, so it's a little bit dense or thick, I guess. So, but hey, no worry, it still tastes amazing. So it's gonna taste amazing to me because that's how I like it. For you, you customize the taste, customize the spices, whatever you want to add to it. It's really all up to you. So the only thing that's left is how to properly serve it, how to properly consume it from a bowl. So what you do is you take a bowl, obviously. I mean, you could use any bowl you want. I prefer to use these big ones. And you fill it up. Fill it up as much as you want. Once it's filled up, you have one final ingredient, and that is you use sour cream. Now, I use this light sour cream because, you know what, that's what I got. So, you take about this much sour cream, just drop it in there, and wiggle it. Now mix it up, and that's it. Your borscht is ready. You're finished. So, thank you very much for watching this video, folks. If you liked it, go ahead and chop that like button in half. If you don't, well, whatever. So, and if you want to see more of these videos, please subscribe. And if you have any comments to me whatsoever, please go ahead and leave the comments below. Thank you very much for watching, folks. Good luck and have fun.